Hey folks, welcome back to Max Nave Horsemanship again today. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than most of my videos because, well, it's a pretty serious topic. I don't need to have any horses here to do it, so you're not going to see horses in the background, but it is about horses. But it's a very serious topic. I did a video on this subject a few years ago. Don't remember how long ago, been a while, need to do another one. And now I'm going to make it a little more detailed, and this time it's kind of personal, which is one of the things that kind of inspired me to do this, because it affects me directly. It's something that well, I'll get to that in a minute. But the subject that we're going to talk about is death. And for a lot of you, it's something you don't even want to think about, you don't want to talk about it, and the fact that I even mentioned that word might be enough for you to stop, but please don't. Hear me out to the end. This is important. It is very important that you're actually prepared for it. Now, before I talk about death, though, I want to talk about life. There's a concept of retirement, whether it's for humans or animals. It's a relatively new concept. It's a concept that has, well, it's only been around probably less than 100 years. And only in a few of the more advanced and developed countries. A lot of countries to this very day, it is still quite common to work till the day you die. There is no such thing as retirement. And a lot of people like to retire their horses. At a given age, they'll decide, well, it's paid its dues. It can just go out in the pasture and be a horse now. And, well, the thought is there. It's okay. I mean, I'm not opposed to that if that's what you want to do. But it probably doesn't hurt them to continue working, unless the horse actually has some kind of a physical disability or something, or an injury or something that makes them unrideable and they are now your pasture pet. Retirement isn't something that you should be doing. Now, the average light horse lives about 25 years. Now, that's average. It can vary a lot for different reasons. Excuse me if you see me swatting a lot. The mosquitoes are really bad out here. So, average life, though, 25 years. The average human is, well, I don't know, I think it's 67, 68 or something. Probably double of that of the horse. And depending on the age that you get the horse at and how old you are and everything, it's possible you could see the life and death of 2 or maybe even 3 horses in your lifetime. Well, more depending on if you like to have multiple horses around. But as far as those of you that just have 1 horse at a time, you could still easily see 2, if not 3 horses in your lifetime. So this is why the topic is something that I think I need to talk about, because the death is something you're going to see. It's guaranteed. But I got to back up a little. The whole retirement thing. See, I had 1 horse that I bought that, well, she was kind of deemed to be semi-retired. I figured there's no such thing, didn't matter. And for my purposes, she was just fine. I don't care if she was an older horse. And like I say, it varies from 1 horse to another, too. And I was talking to one guy personally that his own horse lived to be into its 40s, was still pulling the stone boat out on the farm. And the reason it was pulling the stone boat, that's probably why it lived that long, because it was getting constant exercise and activity. And that probably did it good. Now, there may have been some other factors involved, genetics and whatnot, that made that horse live the way it did. But fact is, it was nothing special. Certain breeds are prone to live a little bit longer, but it wasn't even one of those breeds, and it still lived to be in its 40s. I've personally seen horses that were in their late 30s, and I read an article not long ago about a guy that was still doing endurance riding with a horse that was 42. That seems absolutely absurd. I think the world record for the age of a horse is in the 50s, although that's going to be pretty darn rare. And, well, since it's only one, yeah, it was a world record, so it was only one of them. Not a normal thing at all. But they can easily live into the 20s. I had one that was 29, one of my own horses, And like I said, I've personally seen horses that were in their late 30s. So it's not unrealistic. And so why should you retire a horse that may still have another 10 good years of riding left in it? And that's the mistake a lot of people make. They don't just retire the horse because something's gone wrong and the horse isn't rideable anymore. No, they just retired it because it's like, wow, it's getting old. So, my grandmother was old, and she lived to be late 90s, and she could still bake up a storm in the kitchen and keep a yard, and the whole 9 yards, lived on her own. Never mind, another story. Okay, so the guy was endurance riding at 42. Again, that one, in that particular case, that was an Arabian, and they are known to be a little bit longer living than other horses. They have slightly longer longevity. But I do believe that a good portion of that horse's longevity was due to the fact that he was still riding it, and riding it lots, and it was getting exercise. And if you're not familiar with endurance riding, they are rides that are basically races, but they're a super long distance race, and they range anywhere from 20 to 100 miles, and they will do them non-stop. And that's a lot of distance for anybody and any horse. And even if you're in pretty good shape, both horse and rider, that's a pretty long ride. So retirement is not. I don't believe it's necessary, and I don't think it even is good for them. I think that it actually can be detrimental to their well-being, and that they might actually live a little longer if they don't retire. Keep them active, keep riding them, keep working them, whatever you're doing. Chances are they might live longer. So, anyhow, back to the topic at hand. Like I said, the average light horse will live 25 years. Now, depending on the horse and the breed and a lot of other factors, it can range anywhere from single digits to 40, which I've seen. So I know it can happen. And I've seen the younger ones too, by the way. So I know that can happen. So this brings me up to the part I wanted to talk about in this video, is the death. Because it's an inevitability that every single one of you that has a horse is going to watch your horse die. Well, unless you're pretty old and you get a really young horse, then the horse might outlive you. But for those of you that are, at least 25 years away from death, you're going to outlive your horse, most likely. And you need to be prepared for it. And it's a case of both mental, it's a psychological thing in your head, the acceptance that, this is going to happen. Before you ever get a horse, chances are very good you're going to outlive that horse. Before you ever get one, there's a very good chance you are going to outlive your horse. And you need to be prepared for that. And some people can develop a really, really tight bond with the horse, and it's much harder for some than others when it comes to that time when you lose your friend, your companion, a partner, or whatever you want to call. Now, there's generally 3 scenarios that take place when this happens, and well, I'm sure there might be more, and I'm sure you can probably come up with them too and think of a few, maybe in your situation, I don't know, but I'm going to give you the 3 I can think of. The first scenario, probably one of the hardest ones to deal with too, because it's a little bit of a shocker and it's really hard to prepare for it, other than just simply thinking, it's going to happen. The horse is eventually going to die. This is going to happen. So when it does happen, it's not as much of a shock. But the fact is that other than that, you can't really do much. And this is the first scenario, is where you have a younger horse, and due to injuries or some unforeseen illness or genetic condition or whatever, the horse appears to be fairly healthy. One day, all of a sudden, the next day you go out and you got a dead horse. And there's not a lot you can do to prepare yourself for that one, other than simply accept that death is inevitable, and unfortunately it came a whole lot sooner, and without any expectations or plans or anything, which I'm going to get into in the next 2 scenarios, some of the things you can do to plan. just make life a little easier, because there's some things you need to plan for. So anyhow, that one you can't do a lot about. And it does happen. I've seen it happen a few times, and unfortunately there are some rather unscrupulous people out there that will sell sick horses too, that they know have problems. And although I can't really prove it, there's a couple of scenarios where I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened, where somebody sold a sick horse, and within a matter of months, I feel really bad for the one young girl. I think she only had that horse not even 3 months, and it dropped dead on her. I'm pretty sure the people knew it was sick when they sold it, and that's why they sold it. And the real bad part is she's fairly young, still living at home. Mom and Dad didn't even know she had gone out and gotten a job. She saved up her own money and paid for that horse herself. Mom and Dad didn't buy her this horse. She worked for it. She earned the money, she saved the money, and she bought the horse. And unfortunately, a couple months later, it died. Fortunately, I actually did see her again after that, and she wasn't dissuaded. She still wanted to learn more about horses and trimming and all kinds of neat stuff, which was good. I'm glad that she didn't get turned off completely by what took place. But that was one of those situations. I felt like really bad. Not only was you can't prepare for the all of a sudden the horse goes, but she worked hard for the money, and she did it kind of in secret. And she didn't want Mom and Dad buying the horse for her. She wanted it. She paid for it. So I felt pretty bad about that one. But those kind of things do happen, and that wasn't the only incident I saw. I've seen others too, where they had either diseases or genetic conditions or whatever. And again, one day the horse is running around, looks fine, next day it's dead. And these things happen. And it can happen to humans as well, not just horses. But I've seen it happen to horses. So fact of the matter is, mentally try and prepare yourself for it as much as you can. That's about all you can do, because you never know. It may be tomorrow, it may be 10 years from now, but you don't know. And the only thing you can do is mentally prepare as best you can. Scenario number 2. This is probably one of the better ones, if there's any such thing, is you get a horse that has a chronic ailment that it's not going to get better. It's gradually going to take its toll. Maybe it has cancer, or maybe it's just really old. And you know that one of these days that horse is just going to drop dead. Now, in certain cases, you might want to move into the third scenario with this, but we won't go there. We'll just say, got a horse that don't look too good. And they're thinking, you know what, it might not make this winter. Now, this is going to vary depending on whether, depending on where you live. There's a lot of different scenarios. Some places won't even allow you to bury a horse on your property. And, again, it depends on where you live. Where I happen to live here, I don't own the land, but I did get permission to bury on it, if it ever became necessary. However, we didn't do that. Anyhow, there's different rules and regulations, and if the horse dies of natural causes, in some places you don't even actually have to bury it. And I heard one story, one of my relatives that had a horse passed away in the wintertime. The ground was frozen, and there was nothing they could do to dig a hole for it or anything, so they waited till the corpse had frozen, cut it up with a chainsaw, and then used the quad to drag it off into the bush in pieces and let the coyotes take care of the rest. And kind of solved that problem for them. And if you can do that, that's an acceptable thing to do. It sounds kind of gruesome, but well, it is what it is, and that's where, going back to it depends on where you live. Where I happen to live, for some of you this might not apply at all, but where I happen to live, winter can get pretty darn cold, and the ground gets frozen pretty hard, and the frost can get pretty deep. And trying to dig a hole in the wintertime is, well, unless you got some pretty expensive equipment, not going to happen. So if you think that your horse is not going to make the winter, you might want to go out there and dig a hole now while it's not frozen. Now, if you live somewhere where the ground never does actually freeze, then you might not have to worry about that. But it's one of those things where you can not only be mentally prepared for the inevitable, but physically prepared as well by making a hole ready so that when the time comes, you can put the horse in it and bury it, and you're done. So that, that's one of those things is if you know it's coming, you get yourself both physically and mentally prepared for it. And well, sometimes certain scenarios, you might want to move it into the third category. Scenario number 3 is where you have a horse that you know is, well, this is the category I was in. She wasn't doing well. I knew she wasn't doing well. She had a chronic ailment that, although we could have treated the conditions and got her a lot better with medication, you could not cure it. It's one of those things that just couldn't be cured. And I think there may have been a couple of other things going on too, that, because, well, occasionally she would have seizures that would make her shake and then flip over, and a good thing I was never riding when that happened. But I did see it happening. So it's one of those many not good things that could happen. I also noticed just in the last couple of months, she lost an awful lot of weight too, which, well, financially that was to my benefit because it actually moved her down into the next weight category, so it cost me about $100 less to have her euthanized. Now this is where you need to be prepared, because I knew it was coming, I knew it had to happen, and I was prepared for it. I actually made the decision quite some time ago. It was just a matter of being able to get around to doing it. That was a bit of a dilemma, money and logistics and everything. I don't own my own horse trailer anymore. I had to borrow one, and things like that. I had to take time off from work. I had to make an appointment. There's all this stuff, and this is where you need to look at your options ahead of time and plan accordingly. And you need to be prepared. Like make the necessary, inquiries as to what your options are. What are your options? And well, I actually had several, and they varied a lot in price, anywhere from a few $100s to a couple thousand. And I'm glad I investigated a little bit and looked at what my options were, so that I could actually make an informed choice and save myself an awful lot of money. But I was anxious to get it over with too, because I really felt bad every time I came out here and I was working with one of the other horses, and I'd look out of the pasture and I'd see her out there, and although she was still moving around and everything else, I knew she was suffering. And I felt bad that we couldn't get this done. And a lot of people are, I feel bad for you, you had to do it. Don't feel bad, I'm relieved. I'm relieved that I got it done, because she's not suffering anymore. And well, this is where, some people will say, oh, you didn't like your horse, you had to put down, you killed it. No, that's exactly why I did it. It's because I did like her, and I didn't want to see her suffer. And had it been possible to do it a little sooner, I probably would have done that a little sooner, because I didn't want to see her suffer. I didn't want her agonizing, and she was not young anymore. She was in her 20s, and she was never going to be rideable, probably, and even if she physically was rideable, she probably wouldn't have been safe to ride. And then there's probably still other things going on we didn't even know about. So at the end of the day, the best thing to do was to have her put down. Now, on that note of making that decision, which is a horribly tough decision for a lot of people to make, I mean, extremely difficult for many people to make that decision. And I feel for you if you ever have to make that decision. Mosquitoes, they're terrible today. They've been bad for the past month. Anyhow, I really feel sorry for anybody that has to make that decision, because it's not an easy one to make. And but you can't be selfish when you do it. A lot of people will go, oh, but I don't want to put her down. I can keep her alive for another so many months, or maybe in a couple more years, because they want that horse with them. They don't want to lose their friend, their companion, their partner, whatever. But you're actually just being selfish. You're not thinking about the horse. If you appreciate that horse and really care about the horse, do what's right. Yeah, it's not going to be cool, losing a horse, not having your horse, especially if it's one you spend a lot of time with, and all of a sudden you walk out there and you don't have anybody to feed that carrot to anymore. It can be tough. It can be very tough. I'm actually lucky where I live here. I've got 2 horses I'm working with, and one more that I have. I work with them a tiny bit once in a while. I actually have permission to ride that one, so it's not like I'm exactly out of a horse. So I'm probably a little luckier than some, but if you have to make that decision, I'm never ever going to be the one to say you did the right or wrong thing. Okay. Not long ago, there were a few people, a couple had a horse, and it had cancer. It still seemed pretty darn healthy, and it was doing okay, but it was getting up there in its years. But it was a real nice horse, and I liked it, and well, so did a few other people. When they found out the plans were to have the horse put down, there was actually a couple people wanted to buy the thing to prevent that from happening, and well, they wouldn't sell it, and I kind of don't blame them. And there was even another person, he wasn't one of the ones that made the offer to buy, but he even said, oh, some people just like killing things. No, that wasn't the case at all. They were being humane. They were doing the right thing. The horse, it was starting to, just shortly before they had her put down, it started losing weight. So the cancer was obviously getting worse. They were already quite sure it had cancer. It had for quite some time. And they were just prolonging the inevitable. And it was, they weren't even riding it anymore anyhow. Although apparently she was rideable and a good riding horse and everything else. I actually talked to one person that had ridden the horse. And, but, there was a number of people that really second-guessed their choice. And I don't think they made the wrong choice. And I don't think it's fair to ever second-guess somebody's choice when it comes to something like that, because it's an extremely hard choice to make. So even if it's not you making the choice, if you know somebody else that had to make that choice, don't ever give them a hard time about it, because first off, you can't change the past. It's done. Don't make them feel bad about it, okay? If they had to have the horse put down, that's what they had to do. And they can't undo that. It's too late now. So don't ever try and go around telling them they made the wrong decision. And don't ever tell them they're an idiot or they're rude or they're cruel or anything like that. And if you're the one that has to make that decision and somebody tries shooting that crap at you, ignore them or tell them where to go and how to get there. I would, because it's not an easy decision to make, and for some of you it's extremely difficult. And if you have to make that choice, I'll be the last one to ever say anything about whether it was right or wrong. That's your call. That's your horse and your decision. And whether it's right or wrong is entirely up to you. And I had to make that decision too. And whether it was right or wrong, that was up to me. I'm pretty darn sure it was right. I can't see any way, shape, or form it was wrong. If I had kept her alive for any length of time, I would have simply been prolonging the inevitable. I doubt she would have made it this winter. And by doing what I did when I did, I probably saved money in a number of different ways, and she wasn't suffering anymore. Was I happy that I had to do it? No. It really wasn't a great choice, and it wasn't one that I thought long and hard about it. I didn't make it just, it wasn't just a snap decision. It actually took me, probably a better part of a couple months to actually finally decide, nope, here's the pros and cons, here's the two choices I got to make, and well, this one, eventually I'm going to have to make it anyhow. And now it's like, okay, so I definitely am going to have to make that choice. It's just a matter of time. The sooner we do it, the better. Let's get it over with. And it was actually getting to the point where I couldn't even properly care for her anymore because of her condition. And that kind of, that convinced me right then and there I was not making a bad decision. It was definitely the right thing to do. So I hope this is going to help you some. Try and be prepared mentally and physically as much as possible. Before the time ever comes, check around and find out what your options are. In some places, you may or may not be able to even euthanize the horse on your property. I don't know what the rules are. Every place is a little different, and even where I live, different parts of this area are different. The rules vary from one area to another. In the country I live in, firearms are, well, I'm not allowed to have one anymore. Well, I'm just not allowed to have one. I'm not prohibited from having one. I'm just not allowed to have one. I don't have the certification necessary to continue owning firearms or using them. We have a lot of restrictions here. And there are certain areas where you live in this country too, where you're not allowed to use them. Even if you are allowed to use them, you aren't allowed to use them there, sort of thing. So those problems, if you use chemical euthanasia, the meat becomes toxic, you can't leave it above ground, it must be buried. But then you run into whether or not you can actually even bury an animal on your property. You have to investigate all these things and all the various options. Do you want the body taken to the landfill, to a crematorium? Do you want the ashes back? On and on and on. There's options. There's lots of options. And what it costs you will vary a lot depending on those options that you take. So, I mean, if best case scenario, you got a tractor with a bucket on it that gets used every day anyhow, go dig a hole and pull out your gun in one bullet and the horse is, it's done. Wouldn't want to have to do that, but anyhow, you know, and it's going to cost you the fuel for the dig the hole. That's it. It might be pretty cheap if you have that. If you have to go out and buy the tractor or an excavator to dig a hole or something like that, it could be extremely pricey because even a cheap one is not cheap, relatively speaking. Many tens of thousands of dollars you're going to pay for the equipment to use to dig the hole. If you got it already, that's one thing. If you got to go buy it, no, don't forget about it. You're not doing it. You want to pay somebody to come dig the hole for you and then fill it in later, well, that is another option as well. Another option I had was to have the vet come out and euthanize her on property, but I would still have to dispose of the body or bury it. Either one was going to cost money. I did have permission to bury on the property, but the tractor's kind of old and they were concerned that it would be a little bit too much work for it. I don't think it would have been, but there was other factors too. The soil here has lots of stones and rocks in it, and the bale spike on the bucket probably hasn't been off in 10 or 15 years, and I don't know how easy that would have been to remove, and I would have had to take it off in order to dig a hole. So, you know, that kind of creates problems there. And if I had to pay somebody to come and get the body and dispose of it and all that stuff, it would have actually cost me more for the vet to come out here than for me to take the horse to the vet, by quite a bit actually. And then to dispose of the body afterwards and everything. Well, like I said, my options were anywhere from a few hundred to a couple thousand. There was a couple different options in between. You need to check out yours and what they are so you can make the right decision when the time comes. Be mentally prepared. Everybody's dying. Everything on this planet, plant, animal, human, is going to die eventually. Okay? Death is an inevitable thing. Everybody, you've got to be prepared for it. It's not something that you want to look forward to, that's for sure, but it's going to happen, and that's the reality of horse ownership, is that it's very likely you're going to outlive your horse and you're going to watch it die or have to make the choice to have it put down. You have to be prepared to do it. You have to know what your options are. You have to know what it's going to cost. You have to be physically ready for it. You have to be mentally ready for it. Well, you get it. Hope this helps you a bit, and don't ever let anybody question your choices. Whatever choice you make, that's the right one. It's your choice to make. Have a good day, and we'll see you on the next one. Hopefully it'll be a little cheerier. Bye now.